Hi, I'm Michelle Begue with a look at what's happening in Latin America now. But first, our news trivia. The last Mayan city to resist European conquest in the 17th century was in which Latin American country? We'll have the answer later. Protests in Bolivia have entered their third week, and they have been turbulent. Demonstrators clashed with police in the city of Santa Cruz. Officials say 4 people have been killed and 178 injured. The economic minister says the collateral damage has reached $700 million. That number includes losses in both commerce and food shortages. Meanwhile, President Luis Arce announced the country will hold its first census in more than a decade in 2024. This has not pleased protesters, who have asked that the census be conducted sooner. The reason? Residents in Santa Cruz believe they pay more in taxes than they receive in services. Brazil's presidential elections ended 2 weeks ago, but supporters of the country's losing incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro are convinced of electoral fraud. Protests have been going on since the election, although they are dwindling. More than 100 die-hard Bolsonaro supporters have camped out outside a military command post in Sao Paulo. Others are holding demonstrations in Rio de Janeiro. Bolsonaro has still not acknowledged his defeat and has disappeared from the public eye for more than a week. And in Colombia, we covered the first 100 days of President Gustavo Petro's presidency. His supporters marched on the street to show their endorsement of him this Tuesday. According to a poll by Invermar published over the weekend, 49.7% of those surveyed approved of the president's administration, a reflection of the country's division. The opposition is set to hold manifestations Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And let's go to my colleague Joel Richards in Argentina. He has the latest on events leading up to the World Cup, which starts this weekend.
Here in Argentina, there is euphoria and hope about the chances for the national team in Qatar. It is probably Lionel Messi's last World Cup. It is the first World Cup since the death of Diego Maradona, and the side is unbeaten since 2019, so there's a certain feeling here that perhaps the stars could be aligning for the Albiceleste. South America has 9 World Cup titles. Argentina has 2 of those, but Brazil boasts 5. And the side coached by Chiche are one of the favourites this year. Star striker Neymar leads a new-look Brazil side that won a tough South American qualification group, and few sides will want to face them. Uruguay hosted and won the first tournament in 1930, and 20 years later produced one of the great upsets of all time in the World Cup, beating Brazil in the 1950 final. That's known as the Maracanazo. Striker Luis Suarez is also playing his last World Cup, and the Celeste are without coach from the last 3 tournaments, Oscar El Maestro Tavares. Ecuador play their 4th World Cup. Coach Gustavo Alfaro has brought in a number of exciting young players, and even if they score few goals, they hope to reach the last 16. La Tri play the first match of the World Cup against hosts Qatar. Finishing off Latin American sides playing are Costa Rica and Mexico, who both qualified from the North and Central American group CONCACAF.
Now let's check out the stories we're following for next week. First, in Mexico, we're following the most recent developments on femicide, as gender-based violence is a huge issue in the country. The death of 27-year-old Ariadna Fernandez Lopez is the latest femicide to make headlines. The first hearings are being held for her alleged murderer. The case has received high-profile coverage because the Attorney General of the city of Morelos is accused of protecting the alleged killer. This comes after it was officially announced that a forensic examination determined she died from intoxication. Second, in Florida, we're following restoration efforts as the U.S. state has been hit by several hurricanes this season. In particular, the news that immigrant workers, many of whom are undocumented and from Latin America, are reportedly doing the hard labor to help Southwest Florida get back on its feet. Experts say that with the labor shortages in the Gulf states, Latin American workers are filling that critical role with storm recovery efforts. And now the answer to our news trivia. The answer is C. In Guatemala, archaeologists are exploring the Tayasal site, which is the last Mayan city to resist European conquest in the 17th century. The site includes rich artifacts and a 30-meter-high acropolis thought to have been the residence of the ancient ruling Mayan elite. The excavation began in June 2022 at the Tayasal outpost, where the Mayan inhabitants are believed to have settled in 900 BC. And that's it for this week. We'll see you again soon on Latin America Now.